Gary McKinnon saw a red light in the sky when he was 13. It moved too slowly to be a meteor and too erratically to be a plane, bouncing through the air like a dolphin skipping across water. That one moment turned into a lifelong obsession.
When I was about 12 or 13, I saw my first and last actual sighting of an unidentified flying object, lights in the sky that I couldn't explain. And I was looking from an upstairs window, and this light went across from almost vertical to the horizon in about, 3 to 5 seconds.
By 2001, Gary was a computer expert in London, convinced the US government was hiding proof of extraterrestrial life. So he did something about it. With a dial-up modem and a homemade script, he broke into 97 of the most sensitive Pentagon computer systems in the United States. What he found sent the entire government into a panic. They spent 10 years trying to prosecute him. He faced 70 years in federal prison, not for stealing money, not for selling secrets, for looking at files. So what exactly did Gary McKinnon find that was worth burying a man for the rest of his life?
Among the things I found, there was an Excel spreadsheet entitled Non-Terrestrial Officers, which I took to be a space-going fleet made of human personnel, not aliens. It did list their names, I couldn't find them on the internet at the time.
Picture the scene. It's late at night, a cramped flat in North London. The glow of a monitor is the only light in the room. The modem hums in the corner. McKinnon's Perl script is running, probing thousands of government servers for blank or default passwords. He takes a breath, hits enter, and one by one, the doors start opening. He's not a spy. He's not working for a foreign intelligence service. He's not even a particularly skilled hacker by most definitions. He's a 35-year-old systems administrator who's bored with his day job and frustrated with a 9-to-5 grind. His real passion has consumed him for decades, ever since that night when he was a kid. And now he's doing something about it. To this day, he insists that what he did wasn't hacking. He describes it as going fishing for information. The government would later describe it very differently. Using a program called Remotely Anywhere, McKinnon starts moving through systems belonging to the U.S. Army, Navy, Air Force, Department of Defense, and NASA. He accesses NASA's Johnson Space Center and U.S. Space Command. The security is shockingly weak. Many of these machines, the ones protecting America's most sensitive defense infrastructure, are sitting behind blank administrator passwords. No firewalls, no two-factor authentication. Just open doors. He walks right in, and the fact that he can do this so easily will later become evidence of one of the biggest security failures in U.S. military history.
Wanted to put you in prison for 60 years, so...
70.
For 70 years.
And I bought potassium chloride. I was just going to swallow it and have a heart attack and die.
Oh my God.
He found, he says, photographic proof of alien spacecraft and the names and ranks of something he called non-terrestrial officers.
And what he finds inside will turn his life upside down. But not in the way he expected. Because here's the thing about going fishing in government servers. Most of the time, you catch nothing. And for a while, that's exactly what happens. Most of what he finds is exactly what you'd expect inside government computers. Boring. Staff reports, department memos, logistics spreadsheets, the kind of bureaucratic paperwork that would put anyone to sleep. Night after night, McKinnon logs in, browses through file structures, scans folder names, and finds nothing that proves what he's looking for. But then, on a U.S. Navy server, he opens something that makes him stop breathing. It's an Excel spreadsheet. The title reads, Non-Terrestrial Officers. He stares at it. The spreadsheet lists names, ranks, and organizational details that don't match any known U.S. military roster. There are tabs showing transfers between ships, but these aren't ships he recognizes. They're not in any Navy registry he can find. They don't correspond to any vessel that's ever been publicly commissioned. To McKinnon, this means one thing. There's a military operation happening somewhere that the public doesn't know about. And it's not on Earth. But that wasn't even the most interesting thing he found. Because a spreadsheet is just words. And you know what's worth 1,000 of those? A picture. Now, before McKinnon went digging through NASA's image servers, he'd heard the testimony of a woman named Donna Hare.
My name is Donna Hare. During the 70s and 71, I worked in the Building 8 of NASA. I worked in the photo lab, I worked in different areas of the company. And I looked, and in one of the photo panels, I saw a round white dot. And I said, "Is this a UFO?" And he's smiling at me, and he says, "I can't tell you that."
Donna was a former NASA employee who worked at the Johnson Space Center for years, specifically inside the highly secure area known as Building 8. One day in the 1980s, Donna stopped by a co-worker's office about something completely unrelated. When she walked in, he had a satellite image pulled up on his screen. He showed her a white cigar-shaped object hovering above the Earth's surface. He asked her what she thought it could be. She said it might be a blob on the emulsion, or maybe a scanning defect. Then he pointed to something that made her catch her breath. The object was casting a shadow on the ground below it. Whatever it was physically there. It was real. In a later interview, Donna described the moment. "He was smiling at me, and he says, 'I can't tell you that.' What I knew he meant was, it was a UFO, but he couldn't tell me. So I said, 'What are you going to do with this information?' And he said, 'Well, we always have to airbrush them out before we sell them to the public.'" Think about that for a second. NASA had a protocol in place for removing UFOs from satellite imagery before releasing it. Not a suggestion, not a one-time decision. A protocol, a system. That's not McKinnon speculating from a bedroom in London. That's what a former employee said under her own name, on the record. McKinnon believed her, and since he already had access to NASA's computers, he wrote a program to search for that exact image system. He narrowed his list down to machines inside Building 8. Naturally, they had blank passwords, so he logged into them one by one. Most of the machines had empty desktops. Nothing interesting. But one computer had folders labeled raw, unfiltered, processed, and unprocessed. This was exactly how Donna described the system. This was the one. The folder labeled unprocessed contained a massive image file. His connection was way too slow to download it, so he tried to view it through the remote desktop instead. He clicked the file. And this is where the story gets agonizing, because on a 56K dial-up connection, the image doesn't load all at once.
But what came onto the screen was amazing. It was a culmination of all my efforts. It was a picture of something that definitely wasn't man-made.
It loads pixel by pixel, line by line, from the top of the screen downward, like a curtain being pulled open 1 inch at a time. And he can't speed it up. He just has to sit there and watch. The first few lines are dark, space, black nothing. Then a curve begins to form, the edge of something round and blue. Earth's horizon. And then, about 2/3 of the way down, something appears that shouldn't be there. A large, silvery, cigar-shaped object, completely smooth. No rivets, no seams, no markings of any kind. Unlike any aircraft or satellite he's ever seen in any database anywhere. This isn't debris. This isn't a lens artifact. This looks engineered. This looks like a craft. His heart is pounding. He needs to save this image. Download it, screenshot it, anything. But his connection is crawling, and the file is in a proprietary format he can't easily copy. And every second he's logged in, he's leaving a trail. Every minute he spends staring at this image is another minute for someone at NASA to notice that an unauthorized user is inside their system. Then he notices the mouse on the remote computer move. He's not moving it. Someone at NASA's end is sitting at that machine. They've spotted the unauthorized session. A few seconds later, they kill his network connection. The screen goes black. And just like that, it's over. He never completed the download. He never saved a copy. He never captured a screenshot. The most important thing he'd ever seen in his life exists only in his memory. And the people who own that image know exactly who was looking at it.
So did you get the one frame?
No.
What happened?
Well, once I was cut off and my picture disappeared, I was
You were
extremely
actually
pissed
cut
off.
off? Oh, yeah.
Within hours, system administrators across NASA and the Department of Defense were reviewing access logs. A civilian in London with a dial-up modem had walked through the front doors of 97 military computers without triggering a single alarm. The security failure was beyond embarrassing. It was a scandal that threatened careers, but embarrassment quickly turned into aggression. U.S. prosecutors built a case against McKinnon that carried potential sentences of 60 to 70 years in prison. They accused him of deleting critical files, disrupting military networks, and causing roughly $800,000 in damage to defense systems. McKinnon denied causing any harm and insisted he was only searching for hidden information. Now, try to see this from both sides. From McKinnon's perspective, he was a curious civilian who stumbled onto evidence of something extraordinary and got caught before he could share it. From the government's perspective, an unknown foreign individual had accessed sensitive defense systems in the months following September 11th, when national security fears were at their absolute peak. Whether McKinnon found aliens or accounting spreadsheets, the breach itself was a crisis. The media picked up the story but downplayed the UFO connection entirely. McKinnon was described as a dangerous hacker trying to harm the Pentagon. The only major publication to mention the UFO side was the UK Daily Mail. McKinnon later said that publicity was one of the things that saved him. The United States formally requested his extradition. What followed was one of the most high-profile extradition battles in modern history.
The Prime Minister has offered his sympathy to a Londoner facing 60 years in an American jail for hacking into US military computers.
Described by the US as the biggest military computer hack of all time. Since then, with backing from his family and a growing number of supporters, McKinnon's been fighting against extradition to the United States.
McKinnon's defense team didn't deny the hack. Instead, they focused on his mental health. McKinnon had been diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome and clinical depression. His lawyers argued that sending him to face decades in harsh American prison conditions, far from his family and support system, would pose a serious risk to his life. The case became a cause in the UK, with public figures and human rights organizations rallying behind him. The legal battle dragged on for nearly a decade, consuming his entire life. Then, in 2012, UK Home Secretary Theresa May blocked the extradition, stating it would create a high risk to his life and violate his human rights. Years later, McKinnon explained why he did what he did. "I thought if this technology really does exist, it should be used for the good of all of us. Free energy, or at least very cheap energy. If this has been kept secret, why? Because obviously that'll be used against people if it's being kept secret rather than furthering humanity." And here's the part that the prosecutors never wanted to talk about. McKinnon actually did the U.S. government a favor. Using the hacker named Solo, he sent messages to U.S. agencies telling them their security was dangerously weak. He wasn't trying to cause damage. He was trying to find the truth. But the government wasn't interested in fixing their passwords. They were interested in making an example of him. The U.S. government never addressed what he claimed to have found. They didn't deny the non-terrestrial officer's spreadsheet existed. They didn't explain the raw image folders at NASA. They didn't comment on the cigar-shaped object. They simply prosecuted the man who looked. And when that failed, they moved on as if none of it ever happened. But McKinnon's discovery didn't exist in a vacuum. Long before he sat down at that computer in London, rumors had been circulating about a classified space program that would explain exactly what he found. In 1983, President Ronald Reagan announced the Strategic Defense Initiative, nicknamed Star Wars by the media. Officially, it was a missile defense system designed to intercept nuclear weapons using satellite tracking and laser technology. But some researchers suspected the program was covering something much larger, something that had nothing to do with Soviet missiles. And here's where it gets interesting. In 2007, HarperCollins published the Reagan Diaries, a book of personal entries the president jotted down throughout his time in the White House. On page 334, dated June 11, 1985, Reagan wrote, "Lunch with 5 top space scientists. It was fascinating. Space truly is the last frontier, and some of the developments there are like science fiction, except they are real. I learned that our shuttle capacity is such that we could orbit 300 people. Now, if you know the space program, that entry makes no sense. The maximum capacity of a NASA space shuttle was 8 people. The entire fleet at the time was only 4 shuttles. Even if you launched all of them at the same time, which they never did, that's only 32 people. So what exactly was Reagan talking about? Was he confused? Was it a typo? Or was he referring to a completely different program? One with ships large enough to carry hundreds of people? Ships that don't appear in any public record? Later, researchers suggested Reagan might not have been talking about NASA's shuttles at all. He might have been referencing a canceled program to develop a space plane called the Star Raker, which, unlike the shuttle, was bigger than a 747 and could carry a payload of 200,000 pounds. More than enough to put 300 people on a space platform. That program has a name, Solar Warden. According to those who claim to know about it, it's been operational since the 1980s. A secret fleet of massive carrier-style ships and smaller escort craft, each carrier over 600 feet long and staffed by 300 crew members, patrolling the solar system under a naval chain of command. Its mission is to detect, monitor, and respond to extraterrestrial activity in our solar system. The first public reference to Solar Warden appeared in early 2006 when an anonymous post showed up on a bulletin board called the Open Minds Forum. It read, "We have a space fleet which is codenamed Solar Warden. There were, as of 2005, 8 ships equivalent to aircraft carriers and 43 protectors, which are space planes. This base was established in 1964 by American and Soviet teamwork." The post also claimed visits to every planet in our solar system, and that the technology came from reverse engineering alien disk wreckage. For a few years, Solar Warden flew mostly under the radar, but in 2012, it came roaring back into the conversation. Now, remember McKinnon's spreadsheet? Non-terrestrial officers. Transfers between unrecognized ships. If Solar Warden is real, that spreadsheet suddenly makes a lot more sense. Those officers might not be stationed on Earth. Those ships might not be sailing on water. They might be exactly what the spreadsheet says they are. Non-terrestrial. In 2012, researcher Darren Perks claimed Solar Warden operated under the U.S. Naval Network and Space Operations Command. He described carriers supported by about 40 scout ships coordinating across the solar system. Perks said he personally investigated the story after being contacted by a whistleblower in the Department of Defense in 2010. While conducting a Freedom of Information request, he received an unexpected email response that read, "I spoke to a NASA rep who confirmed this was their program and it was terminated by the president." If Perks wasn't lying, that email clearly indicated Solar Warden existed, or something like it did, but was quietly shut down under the Obama administration. Neither NASA nor the DoD has ever commented on it. But while McKinnon's evidence remains locked in his memory and on government servers none of us can access, new sightings keep emerging around the world that make it harder than ever to look away. And one recent case captured on a GoPro is forcing even the most hardened skeptics to pay attention. A routine paragliding flight over Garden Ridge, Texas, turned into something nobody could have predicted. A pilot was gliding at altitude, camera mounted and recording, when a dark, structured object appeared directly ahead. Not in the distance, not on the horizon, about 20 to 30 feet away, sharing the exact same airspace. Imagine you're that pilot for a moment. You're suspended under a fabric wing, completely exposed, with nothing between you and the ground but air. And something that shouldn't exist is hovering right next to you, close enough to see texture and detail, close enough to touch if you could somehow reach it. The object doesn't look like any known aircraft, drone, or balloon. It's cocoon-like, with a segmented exterior that appears layered, almost armored. Some analysts describe it as mechanical. Others say it has an organic quality, as if the structure could shift or unfold at any moment like something alive. In several frames, light bends around the object's edges, creating the unmistakable impression that parts of it are actively changing shape in real time. This is where the term transformer UFO comes from. The object appears to exhibit metamorphic properties, the ability to alter its physical form mid-flight. And unlike the vast majority of UFO footage out there, this isn't a shaky dot of light filmed from miles away through a phone camera. This is close-range GoPro footage showing texture, surface detail, and structural complexity. Its behavior is equally strange. Despite wind currents strong enough to visibly affect the paraglider, the object holds a perfectly steady position. It's not drifting. It's not tumbling. It's maintaining precise orientation as if it's actively and intelligently controlling its own movement. All right, so let's be honest about what actually holds up here and what doesn't. Gary McKinnon is a real person who really did hack into 97 U.S. military computers. That's confirmed and undisputed. But here's something most people don't know. McKinnon himself says he's never heard of Solar Warden and has no idea how his name got attached to it. He never saw that name on any document, any file, or any image that he accessed. It was the 2012 article by Darren Perks that connected McKinnon to the Solar Warden mythology. And it's easy to understand why the connection was made. The cigar-shaped craft McKinnon described sounds a lot like the carrier platforms in Solar Warden stories. But that's a leap, going from one photograph, if it even was a photograph, to a massive secret space fleet. Conspiracy is a big jump, and McKinnon himself has never made that jump. And the whistleblowers who came forward claiming to be part of a secret space program, some of them fell apart under scrutiny. Corey Goode, who described friendly alien beings called Blue Avians protecting Earth as part of a galactic federation, was eventually forced to testify under oath. He admitted he made the whole thing up. Laura Eisenhower and Andrew Basiago tell detailed stories about teleportation to Mars and armed conflicts with alien species, but their claims read like a checklist of every science fiction trope ever written. Time travel, teleportation, zero-point energy, reptilian wars. It's a lot. Then there's the logistics problem. Every industrialized nation on Earth can detect when another country launches a rocket of any kind. You cannot put a fleet's worth of equipment into orbit without somebody noticing. You'd need constant resupply missions for food, water, and breathable air. The level of secrecy required would demand cooperation from every major government on the planet. That's a lot to keep quiet. And if you're a science fiction fan, the Solar Warden story might sound familiar. A fleet of spaceships, moon bases, and fighters monitoring the solar system for alien intruders? That's the plot of a 1970 British TV show called UFO. It even featured a system called SID, the Space Intruder Detector, whose job was to scan near-Earth space for alien threats. That's almost exactly what Solar Warden supposedly does. Coincidence? Maybe, but it's worth noting. As for the Transformer UFO, the skeptical explanation deserves its fair hearing. Some analysts suggest the object could be an unusual balloon, and the perceived shape-shifting is simply parallax caused by the paraglider's own movement around a stationary object. That's entirely possible. But here's what is hard to dismiss entirely. McKinnon did find a spreadsheet listing officers and ships that don't officially exist, and no one has explained what those records actually were. NASA has never addressed the image archive system he described, or the folders labeled raw and unprocessed. Reagan's diary does reference space capabilities that don't match any known public program. And footage like the Garden Ridge encounter keeps surfacing, clearer and more detailed than ever before, showing objects that nobody has been able to definitively explain away. The only aspect of Solar Warden that truly holds up to scrutiny is Gary McKinnon's personal testimony. But unfortunately, that's all we have. His word. McKinnon once said something that's hard to shake, no matter which side of the debate you're on. He said the suppression of the evidence was more disturbing than the evidence itself. Because if the government truly had nothing to hide, if those files contained nothing but weather satellites and accounting data, they wouldn't have spent 10 years and millions of dollars trying to imprison the man who went looking. And the pattern keeps repeating. Every time someone gets close to the truth, the response is the same: silence, suppression, and prosecution. McKinnon looked at files and faced 70 years. Donna Hare spoke publicly, and her career ended. The footage keeps getting clearer, the encounters keep getting closer, and the official response remains the same. We have no evidence of extraterrestrial origin. Move along. The question isn't whether Gary McKinnon found something in those files. It's why, after all these years, no one in power has been willing to tell us what it was. What do you think he saw? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. So, thanks for watching this video, and we will see you in the next one.